in this state and from all the other states around us. But they've been good for the most part. It's been good. It's a good reminder.
You and I were chatting before we went on here, and I was relating how when I was a child growing up, you know, you'd hear about shootings and police shootings in certain communities, and in other communities like Kaysville, for instance, where you served, that was unthinkable at that point. That has changed.
Yes, I think it's changing all over the nation. I think that's why things like these are a good reminder that they can happen anywhere. It's changing all over the nation, and you can never be too safe no matter where you are anymore.
You have a family?
I do.
Any special words you share with them when you head out to your shift?
I do the same thing all the time. I tell them all I love them. I kiss my wife before I leave the house. It's the same every day before I leave. And they all know. We've all been to several of these throughout my career. So they understand. Then they understand why we do what we do.
The turnout yesterday was heartwarming, I think.
Yeah, yesterday was amazing. The turnout was great. The support from the community, the state, again, all the other states that have showed up in support. Today, same thing. It's exact same thing. Seeing officers from all over the country here this morning already, and it's great. It's great. It's a great reminder of how big this family is too, spread across the nation.
And you never want this to happen, but in a way, today, it's unified.
It is. It's great. It's good to see your brothers and sisters from all over. The support it's great. You have a lot of people that have your back in the community and throughout law enforcement.
And when you see that, you feel that, what is the impact for you?
It's just a good reminder of why we do what we do, and that there are good people still out there. And yeah, it's good for all of us.
A lot of good people out there.
A lot of good people.
For sure.
Yeah,
okay.
Great support.
Chief, thanks so much.
Yeah,
Assistant Chief Seth Ellington with the Kaysville Police Department. He speaks for so many people who are attending a second funeral in 2 days. Live outside the Spectrum, Brian Malay, KUTV 2 News.
Brian, thank you. As officers are making their way into these funeral services, we've been talking to a few of them that are here from out of state. A lot of tradition and symbolism you're seeing over these last couple of days, and one of those important things is that support that comes not just from officers across the state of Utah, but also across the country.
Yeah, and standing next to us here, NYPD, there's also some Chicago police officers next to you. Introduce yourself for us.
Detective Giuseppe Cataya, also known as Joe.
And you are retired.
Retired 2 years February.
All right, and you've seen a lot in New York, obviously. And when you heard about what happened here, it's got to be a heartbreaker.
It hit. They all hit. They all hit. So this is my 11th deployment this year, I think, across the country. And one hurts more than the other. So, yeah.
And what did you see in New York City? I guess you came up through the ranks and that type of thing.
I just retired as a detective. So, the cases and patrol and all that good stuff. And pretty much it, but you see a lot. It's just hard to describe what you see, but we know what we see.
Why is it important for people like you to come and make sure that you're showing support for other officers? You could be retired and home with your kids and grandkids and doing other things.
True, but we're here for the family. For the families of the fallen officers first and foremost, and then that trickles down to the department and the officers who worked with the fallen. So we humble as can be, and we're here for them. That's all that matters.
You will be meeting with the family, his family today, right? And then what do you tell a family who's going through such grief?
Like we tell all the families, we're here for you, and you'll never be forgotten, and the fallen won't be forgotten ever for us. It'll be embedded in our hearts and in our department and all departments across the world. Yeah, so pretty much we tell them that.
Were you here yesterday for the services as well?
I was, yes I was.
Tell me a little bit about, I guess, the feeling that you're getting from listening to some of these speakers and these two men who lost their lives together.
It's a great feeling, because knowing that, he's a brother, they're both brothers, and they put their life on the line for us, for everybody, for the community where they serve, and like I said, it hits hard, and that's what we're here for the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and for the support for the family.
And what would you say to all of us here in this state as people are grieving and really hurting? What can you say?
Be strong, move forward, and life goes on. And watch your backs. Always protect each other, be safe, and the law enforcement's here for you. They're here for you. So, pretty much it.
An important reminder. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Take care.
You as well.
All right. We'll see you.
And just before we were on the air, before we started this broadcast, we were talking to some officers here from Dallas as well, and we were talking about the fact that oftentimes as we go about our lives, we think as police officers, and that's who they are.
Yeah, let's pause just for a second. We've got these motor police officers coming through the area. It looks like Salt Lake City police. And there were also motorcycle officers from Twin Falls, Idaho, who came here. We saw them earlier this morning.
Yeah, long ride for a lot of them, and coming out of state, it's beautiful to see them. But every officer I've spoken to today and also yesterday said they just want people to really think about behind the badge, the families and the people that they go home to kids, they go home to hobbies and hunting and fishing and wanting to see their kids, their kids, that they go home and binge Netflix as well. And they just want you to think of them as people who are doing a job and certainly want to serve their community, but also as family members as well, because sometimes it's easy to forget that.
No question about that. And one thing that really stands out with the sergeant today, Sorensen, his wife and he were celebrating their 31st wedding anniversary, and that was the day after he died.
A lot of heartbreaking firsts that are going to come. They have 3 children, 2 of them surviving, both adult children. We saw them last week as they were riding with those riderless horses in the parade that was before the county fair that happened, that was a meaningful part of their lives as they grew up there in the Garland community. Yeah,
he loved the fair. That was one of his favorite things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jim Spiewak is with us live this morning as well. We want to check in with you and what you're seeing from your vantage point.
Heidi and Ron, we're on the west side of the property, so behind us to the east is the Spectrum Stadium, where Sergeant Sorensen's funeral will begin here in about 20 minutes. And this is now the second day in a row that the American flag has hung suspended from 2 fire trucks from North Logan City and from Smithfield Fire Department, as we had Officer Estrada's funeral yesterday and now Sergeant Sorensen's funeral today, doing this all over again, laying one of these heroes to rest forever. I also want to show you real quick, Mike, if we could come back on here. I had a chance to go inside the stadium just a few minutes ago, and everyone that is going to be coming in will receive one of these little thin blue line ribbons with a star over it. There are some people passing them out to every single person that walks in. Also being handed out are the programs in loving memory of Sergeant Lee Sorensen. This is the program for today's funeral services, again, inside the Spectrum. There are some similarities to this funeral from the funeral from yesterday for Officer Eric Estrada. We're going to be hearing from Governor Spencer Cox. He has been invited to speak again. We heard from him yesterday during Officer Estrada's funeral, and then also the police chief of the Tremonton Garland Police Department is expected to speak again, and then of course some family, some friends of Sergeant Sorensen also expected to speak. Heidi and Ron and Brian, you all have been talking about what a member of the community he has been his entire life. He was an Eagle Scout, so it started very early on. You mentioned that he loved going to the fair. Another thing that he really loved was the Special Olympic torch run. He loved teaching young people. When you take a look at his biography throughout his entire career, he became an advanced law enforcement rapid response training instructor, an EMS instructor. You mentioned he loved to ride around on his bicycle and do community policing. You also mentioned that there were some firsts. His anniversary that was to be celebrated the day after his passing. Also, he was to be sworn in as a sergeant with the police department on August 22nd, just a couple days after his life was tragically taken in that shooting when he responded to that domestic violence call. So this is a man that spent his life devoted to his community, devoted to his family and friends, going above and beyond. He was not just a police officer. He was involved, as we mentioned, in being certified instructors. He was an EMS instructor. He loved to give back, community police on his bicycle. He also, according to his obituary, he had recently become a medical examiner investigator with Box Elder County, and it goes on to say that he was able to interact with agencies all over the state for the last 2 years, and it was in that capacity of service that was one of the highlights of his career. So here was a man who gave his life for his community, but it wasn't just on that day, as evidence of his entire life's work, his entire body of work as a police officer. He gave back in every single possible way that someone that dedicates their life to service could. So there have been some people coming through to get into the spectrum here. Again, we're on the west side of the property. However, this parking lot is blocked off because it's our understanding that the procession will be coming out after the funeral services are completed. So they're blocking this section off right here. Only authorized personnel allowed. And we have seen the motorcycle motorcade come through a couple times. It's our understanding that they're going to be part of that procession as well when he will be laid to rest out at a cemetery 35-40 minutes away from here. So we're going to be out here throughout the rest of the morning until after the services, and we will bring you that procession when his body does come out. So there are some people making their way in as we're now about 15 minutes or so away from the start of the funeral services. But Ron and Heidi, we will send it back to you.
Jim, thank you very much. And kind of adding to some of his accomplishments, he recently graduated from Utah State University with a degree in agriculture, a Bachelor of Science. And this morning we talked with two of his professors, actually the dean of the college, and then one of his professors. And she was in tears relating how wonderful of a guy he was and how he wanted to accomplish it. He kind of had to do that in order to be elevated to a sergeant. He needed that in his life. But he put his arms around her and thanked her so much for all the help that she had given him while he earned that degree.
We have a small portion of that interview. If we have that, let's listen in for just a second.
Sergeant Sorenson came to my office just over a year ago, and he wanted to come back and complete his Bachelor of Science degree so that he could be promoted to sergeant. He was just such a great guy. As I was working with him, it just made me so proud to know that men of his caliber were here to protect us on the sidelines. When I saw his pictures as one of the fallen officers, it broke my heart. But it also brought me joy to see that sergeant in front of his name, to know that he had accomplished what he came back to do.
Absolutely amazing to hear that.
That was so touching, and so many things like that we've seen over the last couple of days here. And it's hard sometimes to have your own composure, when we're bringing this coverage to.
Sorensen talking about his service, his passion for his job, also his empathy. Just a few minutes ago, we've been watching who's been entering here. Congressman Blake Moore, who serves the northern Utah area and district, is here today. We'll be speaking to him after the services. But as you mentioned, and as we've been talking about, he served in so many different facets of law enforcement that his reach goes across the entire state, and that's reflected here today and who will be seen here. We were talking a little bit about the program earlier. Another thing that we'll see today that we also saw yesterday, the national anthem from Cole Hartley. He is here in Utah. He apparently just moved to Nashville. He was born and raised in Utah, but an inspiring country artist. He was asked to be here for both of these services, something meaningful for these officers and their families. So he will be again doing the national anthem today and joining us after the services as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure very meaningful to him too. What an honor that is. Also on the program today, his brother is going to speak, Will, and just talked about Bo Lewis, and he has 4 or 5 different officers speaking, including his chief of police.
Very touching listening to the chief yesterday. Also a young father himself, working with a small department, Garland and Tremonton, just joining in the last couple of years. These are all very close officers and all have stories about the time they spent together while they had the badge on, and also while they were at home supporting each other in their family life and everything they did outside of the office.
And we talked to a Box Elder County Sheriff's deputy too, who works at the jail, and he knew Sergeant Sorensen very well because, you know, sometimes you have to take suspects to jail, and he said he was always very respectful and kind to those people who came to the jail. And the deputies we've talked to say Sorensen was definitely one of a kind and just one of those types of people that you would like to know.
It's heartening to hear that about Sergeant Lee Sorensen, Officer Eric Estrada, whose services were yesterday. One of the detectives who worked with them said it was fitting that if they had to go, that they would go together because they worked together so well. Their names were synonymous with each other. I walked inside the arena just a few minutes ago, and there was some new artwork up there today. I'm not sure exactly who the artist was, if they were local, but it was a picture of Christ and also these two officers there. It was next to a table where each of these officers that are coming from out of state leave their patches. Those are all left with the families to see as the years go by, the support that they're getting, not just from officers here in Utah, but also across the country, as we've seen.
Yeah. And, well, we have hundreds of people who've been filing in, a lot of them law enforcement. We see the formal uniforms on. The shuttles working, dropping people off about every few minutes. And we understand, Brian Malahy, what is happening on your end?
Yeah, I've been talking to a number of people. Many of them want to get inside to the funeral, so they didn't want to stop and do an interview. But here's a little bit about what I've been hearing. So we talked to some victim advocates, 4 of them, as they were going inside the spectrum, and they said they liked Lee Sorensen. And I asked why, what was the reason? And they said because he cared for victims. Spoke with another woman who said that her husband had a situation developed where he needed some attention by the police. He called the police department, spoke to Sergeant Sorensen, said that interaction was a good one. I've talked to a woman who was, you know, part of their religious community, and she said that the family was terrific. A couple of people who are in the rodeo, they've been rodeo folks for years, and so they grew up with Sergeant Sorensen and his wife. They were in the rodeo, participating in all kinds of events, and then their kids did the same thing, so they have that connection generationally. And then in terms of the university here, we spoke to some people who said, you know, there's a somber mood on campus. One student told us that. There's been a somber mood, and there's really an effort by the students, while they're not attending the funeral, many of them, to leave the space, this area, for the mourners. And one department head spoke briefly to me here today, and he said that he thinks the university has been warm and welcoming. And I can tell you, going through those doors into the arena, I mean, the first thing that you see are people, volunteers who are handing out programs. They're handing out blue and black ribbons in honor of Sergeant Sorensen, and also Officer Estrada did the same thing yesterday. 2 funerals in 2 days. It's been a heavy week. It's been a heavy past couple of weeks here, and people are feeling it. It's palpable. So we're here. We're going to be speaking to some more individuals. I did also learn that the spouse of an officer who was killed a number of years ago, this is a story that we covered extensively, is also attending the funeral today. I'm going to be trying to speak to her, if she's willing, after the funeral services. Live outside the Spectrum, Brian Malahy, KUTV 2 News.
All right, Brian, thank you very much. Talk a little bit more about this service, which is, about 10 minutes away now? It's going to be longer than yesterday's service when you look at the whole picture here. Sergeant Sorensen will be buried in Garland, his hometown. So there will be a procession which will leave the Spectrum here, and that's about 20 miles away. When you consider traffic and those types of things, that trip could be well over a half hour.
And much like we saw yesterday, the burial service will be just for family, close friends, and colleagues. They work together. So we'll be watching from a distance. We won't be up close to the family, letting them have those final moments to grieve and say their goodbyes. A lot of officers here, though, that will be at that service because, as we talked about here in northern Utah, a lot of these departments are small. They work together on their investigations. When there's a call for help, many of them pitch in to help and are there. So a large group that will be headed over there. Yesterday, so a very short procession there. And a beautiful, quiet ceremony, but probably taking a little bit longer today. If you're going to be in the area, you'll want to plan on that traffic as they head with that procession to Garland today. Also, before we started, I spoke to a couple of wives of officers who've lost their lives in the line of duty. Kenda Hoosier, you'll remember her husband, Sergeant Hoosier from Santaquin, died in May, just about a year and a half ago. She is here with Derek Johnson's wife of Draper. He died in 2013 in the line of duty. There's a brotherhood, that thin blue line goes to their families as well, and they make sure they're here to comfort and support the wives of the fallen officers and make sure that in the weeks, months, and even years ahead that they know that they have family to depend on throughout the state of Utah.
And I'm sure that is just so valuable to the current grieving families, because no one can really imagine what they're going through after they get that news. But then someone who has been through it, I'm sure, gives them a lot of comfort or ways that they can cope, the things that you need to look forward to in order to get rid of that initial grief. But I mean, that will always be there, but sometimes you have to turn the grief into good by helping others.
And I think oftentimes in all of our lives, when we're having difficult times, sometimes when you turn and look towards others and serve them, it lifts them up, it lifts you up, and it really helps all of them. Those wives who've lost their husbands in the line of duty also saying that the officers and police force really try to keep you fairly busy throughout that first year. It gets really quiet after that first year when they travel to Washington, D.C. and their name is on the Law Enforcement Memorial. And after that, that's sometimes when you need more support, because sometimes
you're alone.
You're really alone, and a lot of those services happen. And that's sometimes when the court cases begin. The wheels of justice often turn slowly, and that's something that they're there to support each other with too, as they start to get to sometimes those difficult and dark days there.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the procession a little bit more. When Sergeant Sorenson came from the mortuary in Garland this morning, it was fairly quick getting here. The actual procession wasn't as long as it will be when they head from the Spectrum down into Garland, because you will probably have hundreds of officers involved in that.
That will be leaving with them as well.
So I just wanted to point that out.
UDOT also has construction that's in the area. If you travel that area, you know, but they have said that they have ceased their work today to make sure that that will go smoothly. We do want to check back in with Brian Malahy right now.
This is from Bear River, which is very close to the Tremonton Garland area. You brought 3 of your children here today, and you told me there's a special reason why you brought the kids. Why?
Well, we want them to remember the sacrifice and the willingness that people have to protect them.
That's why you're here. You did not know Lee Sorensen personally, but you do have a connection with his family.
We do. We know his brother and his sister and their families. It's a small community.
Everybody knows everybody in some way. A lot of people up here are related to one another, maybe distantly, but they know each other in a personal way. What about the family? How would you describe the Sorensens?
Salt of the earth. As good and as real and as genuine as they come.
Kids, how about you? What do you think about your mom bringing you today?
I'm happy to be here. Well, I'm not happy to be here. I'm glad that I can come and support and honor these men, and specifically Officer Sorensen, but it's hard. It's not
an easy day. Not an easy couple of weeks. All right, Brian Malahy outside the Spectrum, KUTV 2 News.
Mike said drum. Green Hills. Battles are 3-4. Wide right. 1, 2.
Order, arms. Please remain standing for the national anthem performed by singer and songwriter Cole Hartley. Officers, present arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
Order, arms. Audience, please remain standing for the invocation. Uniformed personnel, please remove your covers.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful that we're able to gather here and celebrate the life of Lee. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for Lee in our lives and the jokes and the laughs that we all enjoyed with him. Heavenly Father, we pray as we go throughout this service that we can always remember Lee and for who he was. And we're so grateful for him and the service that he gave to all of us in the community. Heavenly Father, we ask a special blessing upon Lynette, Lacey, and Landon. We pray that they may be able to feel Lee's love and that we can always feel of our Savior's love, that we know that we'll see Lee again and that we can always rely on Thee through this hard time and those that come. And we pray for Thy Spirit to be here today, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
The audience will please be seated. Thank you all for attending today's services as we remember the life and career of Sergeant Lee Sorensen. I am Chaplain Matthew Clough. Lynette, Lee's wife, has asked that I conduct this service. We would like to thank Cole Hartley for singing our national anthem, and Cole Peterson, Lee's nephew, for offering the invocation. Presiding over this service is Elder Todd B. Smith of the 70 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. On the stand with Elder Smith is Bishop Gary Davis, Lee's bishop. We would like to recognize Governor Spencer Cox and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson of the state of Utah. Also in attendance is U.S. Representative Moore from Utah. Additionally, state and local legislatures are in attendance from around the entire state of Utah. We recognize various ecclesiastical leaders who are also in attendance. Today, while we celebrate the life of Sergeant Lee Sorensen, we will be pleased to hear from Kurt Larson, a family friend, who will share a spiritual message with us. Following Kurt's thoughts, Lee's eulogy will be given by Lieutenant Skylar Gailey of the Tremonton Garland Police Department. Lee's cousins, nieces, and nephews will then sing, "I Am a Child of God." They will be accompanied by Mike and Harding, and the chorister will be Madison Peterson. Will Sorensen, Lee's brother, will then share with us his memories of Lee. Following Will's thoughts, we will hear a musical number, a tribute to by Bo Lewis. We will proceed to that point in the program.
Lynette, Lacey, Landon. Thank you for this opportunity to pay tribute to my friend Lee. My grandmother once told me, nothing that can be said at a funeral will change the life of the person that has lived. In this case, I hope I can do justice to the life that Lee lived. When the uniform was hung in the closet, the belt and the badge were put away, there was a husband, a father, a son, a friend, and in this case, a best friend. I would like to share a few experiences with Lee that helped define the person he was. I first met Lee probably 20 years ago, and for the last 10 years, we have worked together. First full-time, while he was a part-time officer with the Garland Police Department, and then part-time with me when he became a full-time officer with the Tremonton Garland Combined Police Department. I was called as a bishop about the time that Lee became a full-time officer. Our time working together was often spent asking each other for advice on dealing with matters the other one was dealing with. Lee always had the better advice. He was a fountain of knowledge. He knew the law. And if he didn't know the answer, he would find it, and then he would share it with me. Lee loved his family. One night, Lee called me late, asking if I could go with him to help retrieve his daughter's car that had been involved in an accident in Salt Lake. He asked if I would hook a trailer behind my truck and go with him. I thought that was strange. Lee had a pickup of his own. Why were we taking mine? But when we got there, Lee said, "Follow me." I said, "Why are we taking your truck and my truck?" And he says, "Because I'm leaving my truck with my daughter." I said, "Lee, what will you drive to work?" He said, "It doesn't matter. I'll find a ride." That's just the type of person Lee was. His sacrifice he willingly gave. On several other occasions, we would be to lunch, and Lee in his other uniform, his fluorescent yellow construction shirt, And if Lee saw a cute girl, he would go up to that cute girl and ask, "Are you single?" I know it kind of sounds creeper, right? But Lee could get away with it. And he'd say, "Because I have a son, and he needs a date." And most of the time, because of Lee's pleasing personality, the girl would consent, and Lee would leave Landon's number with him. If any of you knew Lee, right now he would say, and so I'm going to say it for him, if there's any cute girls out here that want Landon's phone number, his number is 435. Lee loved agriculture. Every June I would get a call from him, and he would ask, "Can you smell that? They started cutting hay today." He would tell me how much he loved the smell of fresh cut hay. Then he would follow up with, "Let's go buy 1,000 acres and I'll farm it for you." I don't know how they assign jobs in heaven, but I hope Lee gets the job of cutting hay. Lee loved his fellow men and had a special gift for making people feel good. Often I was driving truck at night and Lee was on shift, and we would call each other just to chat and visit. I cherished that relationship we had. Often as we were talking, he would say, "Hold on just a minute," and I could hear the window roll down. And the conversation always started with, "Hey, how are you?" I got to eavesdrop on those conversations. He would then ask something specific about that person. Lee seemed to know everybody. He would make a funny comment, get a laugh, and drive on. Once during a time when there was a lot of disdain in this country for police officers, directed toward police officers, I asked Lee what he would do when confronted in that situation. And he said, I'd talk to them. Given the chance, I think Lee could talk and de-escalate any situation. He had that gift. Lee also knew where to turn for peace and direction in life. It wasn't very often when Lee would share his feelings on Jesus Christ. But when he did, it was sincere and powerful. At one point, I was dealing with some pretty tough stuff in my life. Lee was perceptive and a true friend. He was worried about me. He personally called a guy he knew through the peer support team and got me somebody to talk to. But then he did something that I will never forget. He said, "You need a priesthood blessing." Well, I'm probably not the best one to give it to you. I'm willing and I'm offering. And then he shared his beliefs and his testimony in Jesus Christ. He talked about the atonement of Jesus Christ. The atonement isn't just to wash away our sins, but also to help us overcome sorrow, to right the wrongs we have received. In the book of John we read, "My peace I leave unto you, my peace I give unto you." This is a promise from Jesus Christ. It is a spiritual peace that transcends the anxieties and troubles of this world. We are trying to make sense of a terrible loss and a terrible night. I know I second-guess myself and wish I could spend the last times we had together longer and differently. But we don't need to understand. Christ is the only one who can heal us and bring us peace, and we will heal. This peace doesn't come in a big moment. It happens during the small, quiet moments, usually when chaos is happening all around us. It is in the moments we take Christ's name upon us and act as he would. That was Lee. I once had a homeless individual who ended up seeking me out as a bishop. Not really sure of what programs were available in our area, I reached out to Lee for advice. He told me that they usually try to help them get down to the homeless shelter in Ogden, where they have the resources to keep them safe and warm. He told me of a cold winter's cost a person living in their car, homeless and out of gas. Lee helped them get some gas in their car to get to the homeless shelter, I asked Lee, "Is there a budget in your department for that?" Lee replied, "No, I just paid for it myself." He didn't do it for publicity or recognition. He did it because it was the right thing to do, and he was acting as Christ would. It hasn't been talked about a lot, but Lee also worked for the state medical examiner's office, covering all of Box Elder County. He had to recover bodies from many tragic events, ranging from heart attacks, accidents, and suicides. After a particularly tragic case, I asked Lee, "How do you do it?" You can't unsee those kind of things. His response was profound and tells a lot about the person Lee was. His response, "I regard it as a sacred responsibility to treat those remains with respect and bring closure to the family and loved ones of the deceased." Lee understood the sacredness of the human body and had a firm belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, when our body will rise from the grave and be reunited with our Heavenly Spirit. To the officers on scene that terrible night, to the hospital staff, and to Lee's friends at the state medical examiner's office, I extend a heartfelt thank you for treating Lee with love, respect, and dignity. We are taught, as soon as the spirits of men depart from this world, from their mortal bodies, they are taken home to God. And those who were righteous are received into a state of happiness and rest and peace, where they can rest from all their troubles and sorrow. That is where Lee is now, at peace, free from sorrow. One thing that Lee didn't like, and I'll look for the officers if I get this right, but he didn't like a 1036 check. That means a 1036 check, if I understand it, is a call that goes out from dispatch if they haven't heard from an officer for a while, to make sure that he's all right. Did I say that right? Lee didn't like that. To Lee, if he got 1036 checked, it meant that he hadn't been doing anything. And he didn't want anybody to think that he hadn't been doing anything. So he tried to make sure he had something to show that he was working. He would run a plate, stop a car, do a building security check, or something, just so he wasn't idle. If we could tune a police radio to the right frequency, we would hear, we could ask, Tango 10, 1036 check. And the answer would come back, Angel 10, code 4, very much code 4. Lee lives, and we will meet again, of that I am sure. Until then, I will miss you, my friend. In the name of the Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
First off, I'd like to thank the family for the honor to read Sergeant Sorenson's obituary today. The family wrote this, I didn't, and they put the best words to Lee that could be said. There is no higher honor than human service. To work for the common good is the greatest deed. The author is unknown. Sergeant Lee Daniel Sorensen died on August 17th, 2025, in the line of duty defending the lives of the community that he loved and served. Lee Daniel Sorensen was born on October 3rd, 1968 to Leon and Annette Sorensen. He grew up in a large family and was a lifelong resident of Garland, Utah. He was active in his faith, and he earned the honors of Eagle Scout and Order of the Arrow. He graduated from Bear River High School in 1986, where he was active in FFA, rodeo, and the swim team. This past year, he graduated from Utah State University with a bachelor degree of science in agriculture. He served a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Venezuela, where he learned to love the people and the culture that surrounded him. While he served in Venezuela, he learned to speak fluent Spanish, which later helped him in his law enforcement, or later helped him as a law enforcement officer. Lee married his high school sweetheart, Lynette Peterson, on August 18th, 1994. Lynette celebrated their 31st anniversary the day after Lee's passing. This isn't in there, but I talked to Lee a couple days before, and he was expressing to me how much he was looking. He loves you, Lynette. They welcomed 3 children during their marriage: Lacey, Landon, and Annalise. Lee loved his family more than anything and encouraged his children and wife in whatever they were doing. He also cherished his nieces, nephews, and looked forward to their visits, whether it was to help with a project or just some playtime. Lee's love for serving in the community and law enforcement began 16 years ago when he became an officer for Garland City. He became an advanced emergency rapid response alert training instructor, and an EMS instructor, which gave him the knowledge and ability to respond to all types of situations and interact with first responders throughout the community of Box Elder County. He enjoyed community policing, especially when he was on his bike, since it gave him the opportunity to stop and interact with citizens wherever he wanted to. The county fair was one of Lee's favorite annual events, which included his most favorite part, the parade. His love of teaching others led him to become an EMS instructor and a field training officer. He had just earned the rank of sergeant and talked every day about how he could help others become better officers. The respect and empathy he felt for the deceased and their families led him to become the medical examiner investigator for Box Elder County. He was able to interact with many agencies over the last 2 years in his capacity, and the service was one of the highlights of his career. Lee also had a large amount of impact on the youth in the Tremonton and Garland area. He loved teaching young people how to make good choices and decisions so they could grow into respected members of the community. But his talent was to do it in such a way that was unexpected and resulted in lifelong impacts. One of his favorite events was the Special Olympics torch run. He looked forward to his opportunity each year to interact with the athletes which came through the valley. Lee was larger than life and had the ability to connect with people. It didn't matter where he went. There always seemed to be someone he knew. He is remembered for his quiet acts of service and will continue to be an example of patience and tolerance. Lee always acknowledged the fact that we are all different, but we deserve to be recognized. Lee was preceded in death by his father, Leon Sorensen, his daughter, Annalise Sorensen, and his niece, Amberly Sorensen. He is survived by his wife, Lynette, his daughter, Lacey, his son, Landon, his mother Annette, and his brothers and sisters, and many nieces and nephews.
What an act to follow. First off, I'd like to thank Brother Larson and Lieutenant Gailey for the comments that they made. You took my gut in my talk. I can sit down now. One thing about me is I have alternative things, but you are going to hear some of a repeat for some of the beginning. But what an honor it is to be able to talk at my brother's funeral. Lee Daniel Sorensen. Lee is a husband, a father, a son, a brother, an uncle, a cousin, a nephew, and a list of a whole lot more. But one thing about Lee was he was a friend to all that knew him. I don't have time to tell all of Lee's accomplishments in life, but as you heard his obituary, how much things that he did. One thing about Lee, how many 56-year-olds whose lifelong dream is to get a college education. In 2025, Lee did that. Lee graduated from Utah State with a bachelor's degree in animal science. Lee also fulfilled a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Venezuela, where he learned to speak English and speak it fluently, as we've heard, which helped him in his lifelong dream as being an officer. As we've heard, Lee was married for 31 years. 3 children. In a family with 5 boys, 3 sisters, we learn to love one another and help each other. And sad to say, we even learned how to fight, which is not necessarily something we were proud of. Our dad taught us to watch out for one another, taught us to take and have each other's backs, to stick together and love each other, no matter what. Lee worked hard his entire life. Lee had 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, all the time, always working. Lee started at a young age, 7, 8 years old. His father had an accident on the family farm where him and his brother, Lee was 7 or 8 years old, like I said, him and his brother, job became milking the dairy cows. Any of you milk dairy cows, it sucks. The best thing that ever happened was when we were in high school, they sold them. What a great day. Lee was a peacemaker. Lee was the one in the family that made peace, kept everybody together when we were doing our fighting. In his career as a law enforcement officer, I know that carried over. As we heard earlier, Lee was patient. I've heard stories of Lee's patience and the things that he did. One thing that I've heard is he could de-escalate anybody. And what an incredible trait to have. Why can't more people in this world have that trait? Why can't we love one another? Why can't we be the child of God that our Heavenly Father wants us to be? I want to share a few stories that have been told to me within the last 2 weeks that it represents Lee and what Lee believed and what Lee stood for. I'm going to start with one right off the top that I didn't actually have to write down. There was a time my mother was driving through town. She gets a phone call from her son, Lee, asks her, "You got your seat?" Or asks her, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Going in town." "You got your seatbelt on?" "No." "You want to pull over? I'll give you a ticket." But then in the same sense, I've had people, one guy in particular told me that he was pulled over by Lee 3 different times for no seatbelt. He let him off the first 2 times. The third time, he gave him a $100 ticket, he said. But the thing it was, he had his grandkids or kids in there with him, and he took and talked about safety of having your seatbelt on and why you should have your seatbelt on. That was Lee. That was how Lee handled everything. I also want to take and talk about how neighbors, family, that would have a husband or a spouse die. Lee would take time out to go see them, to call them, ask if they needed anything. Lee didn't have to do that. Brother Larson took and told how Lee did the same thing. He cared about everybody. He cared about his community. He cared about his family. Some ladies at some grocery store over home told a story how when they'd get off of a late night shift, Lee would park back where their cars were parked when they were getting off, so they could get into their cars to be safe and not have to worry about anything happening to them. One lady said he saved their life multiple times. don't know what the extent of it is. But that is caring, that is loving, that is Lee. That is what we need to remember Lee. Lee was a true hero. Even on that fateful night, Lee stood for everything that the men in blue stand for. Lee did his job. Lee did what was asked of him. You'll never find a kinder, loving person than Lee. I guarantee it. Lee loved his community. Lee would do anything for the people in Tremonton and Garland. Anything at all. He was there, helping, doing. And yes, he loved that bicycle that he'd ride in the parade. And it was fun to sit there at the parade and hand him candy that the nieces and nephews had picked up, or water, and then he'd take off again with a smile. What true love, what true Christian, what a man of God. Lee loved his job, but he loved his family. Lacey, Landon, Lynette, he loved you very much. But one thing about it, Lee isn't sad. Lee's in a better place. Lee gets to play with Annalise. Meadow, you won't have Lee to play with dolls anymore. He's got Annalise and Amberly to play with, to take care of them until their family can get home. The community came together with charity and love when this incident happened. Let's not lose the fact that two great individuals lost that night and their families. Let's be true heroes and keep the love and the charity going. Charity is the true love of Christ, which we all need to have. I appreciate the opportunity, Lynette, that you gave me to talk about my brother. I love him very much. I love my brothers. I love my sisters. I know we don't tell it to each other very often. But next to my own family, you guys are the greatest. And at this time, we must pull together and help get through this sorrowful time. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
The sirens cry, but hope still shines. Two stars now guide us with a steady light. Their courage lives in every street we roam, a legacy that makes this place our home. Shadows fade in daylight, strength is where they stood. Two hearts became our firelight, shining for the good. Hand in hand we'll carry on, together we'll be strong. Their memories saw. That hope will lead us on.
On behalf of the Sorensen family, we would like to share our deepest appreciation to those in attendance today. Lynette, Lee's wife, has expressed her gratitude for the outpouring of love that she and her family have felt from the community, both near and far. The Sorensens are grateful to the many officers from around the state of Utah who have showed support through the various acts, which include standing with Lee and filling in for Tremonton Garland Police Department. We would like to offer a special thanks to Chief Simmons with Logan City and other surrounding police departments for their efforts to make today's service a special tribute to Lee. Finally, the Sorensen family would like to thank Lee's peers with the Tremonton Garland Police Department, who have been a constant support to her and her family. Our closing speakers will be as follows. Officer Colton Buckley, who will be followed by Officer Grayson Jackson. Both worked with Lee at the Tremonton Garland Police Department. Following Officer Jackson, we will hear from Chief Dustin Cordova of the Tremonton Garland Police Department. Our concluding speaker today will be Governor Spencer Cox. Upon completion of Governor Cox's remarks, the benediction will be given by Aaron Sorensen, Lee's brother.
Morning. So I'm Officer Buckley. I've been in law enforcement for 9 years. The last year and a half has been with the Tremonton Garland Police Department. Lee was my sergeant. I stand with you all today to honor not just a father and a friend, but the best example of what an officer is. Over a year of my time with Tremonton Garland Police has been working with the same crew, which had Lee in it. I want to share my experiences and adventures and lessons learned from Lee. Lee never liked to be called sir, boss, OIC, officer in charge, sarge, or any kind of title. If you tried, he would correct you and ask you that you just call him Lee. He was one of my training officers, and for the 2 days, we had a rough start. But this laid the foundation for a friendship that continues strong to this very day. At first, me and Lee did not get along, and it's probably because we thought the same but communicated differently. And with both of us being stubborn, and we butted heads. But all this headbutting eventually developed into community. That's the type of officer Lee was. He shaped his teaching style to each individual person he came in contact with to help them grow, not just in law enforcement, but also in life. Lee cared about each individual person in his life. When he wasn't on scene of a call, he was on the phone, talking with someone, giving them advice, and then helping them. And if you ignored when he called, he would give you grief like no other, because he would always answer your call, no matter the time of day or night. These calls with Lee could last hours, so it was usually best to try and find him and then continue talking in person. The conversation usually started with a message from Lee, setting a U.S. state code or a case to read, and asking your opinion, which would then lead to a conversation exploring each and every possible viewpoint and how each could be defended. When Grayson and Eric joined me and Lee on our crew, we continued this into a group conversation. We would meet in random locations in town and all park and get out of our vehicles and talk. This would eventually develop into what is known to be lunch and learn, where we would meet at midnight at the department for lunch and discuss whatever topic we had come up with for the night. The goal behind this was not to only help us with our law enforcement knowledge, but also to help make sure we had enough training hours for the year, so that our admin would not have to worry about our crew not having enough hours to keep our certifications. Of course, with Lee's caring nature, he wouldn't just talk to you on shift, but he would also call you during the weekend or on our off days. Last year, I went on a bull elk hunt for a few days, and when I got home, within an hour, I had a text from Lee giving me grief that I had missed my shot. I had not talked to Lee, but somehow he knew that I'd missed my shot. And in that classic fashion, he gave me grief over it and then continued to offer me advice on how to shoot, and that he would take me out to learn how to shoot properly. I should have taken him up on that advice right then, because it wasn't more than a couple months later that I was going to go after a cow elk with my father-in-law, and I continued to miss my shots. About this time last year, Lee was the first person other than my immediate family to know that I was going to be a father. He knew how much it meant for me to become a father and made sure that I could go to every single appointment. He listened to all my fears and worries during the pregnancy and talked me through them. He bolstered me and told me I was going to be a great father, and that he could tell this just from interacting with me. Lee was the first person in our department to meet my little girl. And again, it was just like he knew when I had gotten home, because within 45 minutes he was pulling into our driveway with a little gift to welcome us home from the hospital. Lee was always giving something. If it wasn't his time, it was something someone needed. And he never asked for anything in return. Lee subscribed to a law enforcement subscription shield box and collected a tote full of items. When any of us on our crew needed something, because using our car, Lee would pull out his tote and then go through it and find something similar or the exact item and give it to us. Lee would do this without asking for payment. When we would offer it, he would only ask that we keep on being the amazing officers because he loved working with us. For the last 8 months, Lee led our crew as officer in charge because we were down a sergeant. All of us on patrol crew, too, immediately started to give him a hard time calling him boss, ghost sarge, and other supervisor nicknames. We did this to mess with Lee because he did not ask to lead our crew, but he led anyways. One evening, when we had rotated to grave shift, Lee had gone inside to get something. and we had all decided as a patrol crew to mess with Lee. One of us got a window marker and went up to his patrol car. We started drawing sergeant stripes and the supervisor title on it. We did this all without Lee knowing. And we finished our briefing and we promptly went our separate ways. I had only gone 3 blocks when a chat came across our computers telling us we were all fired for defacing police property. We all answered that we had no idea what he was talking about and maintained our innocence. As cops, we all know our Fifth Amendment right is to not self-incriminate. Lee told us that he would be out of service for the next little while to rewash his car of our vandalism. So when the opportunity came for Lee to put him for sergeant, our whole crew nominated him because we were afraid that he wouldn't do it himself. But Lee was a smart man, and he figured out what we were doing and put in for it himself. On August 7th, the day of the test, I sent him a good luck text. I wanted him to be my sergeant. I loved working with him and for him. And when the decision was announced that he had accepted, I immediately sent him a congratulatory text. Lee, being a humble person, he tried to convince me that our department email had been hacked and that I was mistaken. Unlike Braden, I could not be fooled and knew that my mentor had achieved a hard-earned and well-deserved position. Lee, I'll see you in a couple hours to continue our discussions and learning at midnight like we always do. Love you, Dad.
I'm Officer Jackson. Today I'm here to honor and remember Sergeant Lee Sorensen, my partner and my friend. Lee was a man who wore many hats, if you've heard many times today. He wore each hat with honor, pride, and compassion. He loved serving our community with the titles of police officer, sergeant, medical examiner, EMT, EMS instructor, peer support member, bike patrol officer, FTO, and alert trainer. Beyond his work serving others, he was also a devoted husband, loving dad, caring brother, proud son, a fun uncle, and a loyal friend. Each of these roles shows the kind of man he was to support and to love. Lee never just carried a title, he lived it fully with his whole heart. I recently went through fire school. As I was on Lee's crew, I had to come to him and say, hey, I need a couple hours here and there so that I can get this done. He, without hesitation, said, we'll make it work. Lee then sat me down one night after I got out of class and told me the story about when he tried sitting through fire classes. He said after about an hour on the first day, he realized he was already certified as a law enforcement officer and didn't need to sit through this class right now. That was Lee, always quick with a joke, but behind the humor was a lesson. Know who you are, take full pride in it. He was proud to serve the citizens of Tremonton and Garland as an officer. One moment that sits with me and always will happened just last month on July 20th. I was having a rough day and Lee could see it. Somehow, always, he found me. He would come and find me wherever I was. It didn't matter. It was like he had a beacon that could send it right to me or Buckley or Eric. He pulls up next to my truck, looked at me, and without me even saying anything, he said, go home, see your wife, hug your baby. It may have been midnight, but he was adamant. That was Lee's way. He understood what mattered most, and he reminded us to never lose sight of it. When my daughter was born a month early, I texted him to say, things didn't go as planned and I won't be into work. We're at Logan Regional. He didn't hesitate. He replied, don't worry about work. A couple hours later, sitting in the hospital room, a nervous nurse walked into the hospital room and said, there's a cop outside for you? It was Lee, because that's who he was. Showing up, checking in, making sure the people he cared about were okay in their time of need. Today we grieve as a community, as a family, as friends, and as brothers and sisters in uniform. But I also believe the grief we feel is a message from Lee himself. It's his way of reminding us, hold each other tight, protect the ones around you, and don't forget to laugh. I want everyone to look around at everyone in this room today. We are all here because an amazing man made an impact on us. Lee was more than a protector in uniform, but a man who made sure those around him were cared for, laughed with, and never felt alone. So let's honor him by living like Lee. Let's take care of each other, and because Lee wouldn't want it any other way, make sure to throw in a few good jokes along the way. Thank you, Lee, for your service, your friendship, your wisdom, and your humor. In heaven, always be honored, always loved, and never forgotten.
Thank you for being here. Today we gather with broken hearts to honor Sergeant Lee Sorensen, a husband, a father, a brother in blue, and a friend. Lee was more than just an officer in our department. He was a cornerstone. He was the guy you went to for knowledge, if you needed a good laugh, or you wanted the honest to goodness truth. Because Lee never pulled punches. He'd tell you what he thought. Lee was the voice in a room who spoke up when others stayed quiet, the teacher who made learning fun, and the friend who could make you laugh on your hardest day. Lee embodied the best of what it means to wear this badge: courage, integrity, and compassion. And while we mourn his loss, we also celebrate the incredible life he lived. When I first became chief, I made it a point to sit down with every individual, every officer, everyone that works in the department. And I asked one simple question: what can I do to serve you as chief? Almost every officer gave me the same answer: I don't know, Chief, just let me do my job. The bar was set pretty low. That is, until Lee Sorensen walked into my office. Lee came in with a notepad, a handful of details, because everyone who knows Lee knows he was always prepared. For the next hour, Lee gave me a full list of things that he believed we needed to improve. Honestly, it was harder than getting the job. When he finally finished, 1 hour later, I looked at him and I asked, "Is that it?" Lee turned bright red, shook his head, and let out his signature laugh. He looked me in the eyes and he said, "That's it for now," and he walked out of the office. That was Lee, sharp-witted, thoughtful, always prepared, and never afraid to speak up for those around him.
Lee was one of the best teachers I've ever met. No matter the subject, he had a way of pulling people in. His mix of humor, smart comments, and genuine knowledge made every lesson interesting. I remember him hosting a training for our department. He promised the prize turned out to be a close-up photo of Lee's face, autographed, of course. He had the entire classroom laughing. I am happy to report it did backfire on Lee because another to this day, it still floats around the office making people laugh. Behind the humor, Lee had a gift. He could teach, he could connect, and he could inspire. He brought people together with laughter, but he left them with wisdom. And that is a rare and powerful combination. Lee never wasted an opportunity to teach. And it is in this spirit that I teach you today. To every law enforcement officer here today, look around. We are a family bound by courage, sacrifice, and love for something greater than ourselves. Please don't take that for granted. Lee never did. As an officer, you will consistently deal with people on their worst day. This job can make you feel like the world is bad, that people do not care, and it is us versus them. That is not true. This week we witnessed thousands of people come together to show us love. Let this remind you that the majority of people love you and honor the work you do. Lee believed this. Remember why you became a cop. Remember the bond you have with your work family. And remember to cherish every moment you have together. Train hard and frequently like Lee did. And never forget, when the darkest hour hits, we are the light in the darkness. We are the protectors who shield the innocent from evil, and we are the ones who run towards the danger like Lee did.
We have our Golden Spike Road.
Today we mourn our brother. Who gave everything in the service of others. He sacrificed himself to protect an innocent life that night, and he will forever be our hero. His bravery is not just a memory, it is a torch passed to us. When we put on the badge tomorrow, we must carry it with his honor in our hearts. We will hold the line, answer the call, and protect the innocent with renewed strength for Lee, for his family, and for the people he gave everything to protect. That is how we honor him, and that is how his spirit lives on. Before I close, I just want to say this. In these dark days, we have seen light. The overwhelming support from fellow officers, from citizens, from leaders across our state has carried us through this. To every person who has stood with us, prayed for us, and showed love for Lee and his family, thank you. Your kindness has been a shield. It reminds us while evil can strike, it will never overcome the good that lives in the hearts of so many. We'll miss you, Lee, and we'll always love you. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be with you today. Chief Cordova, thank you for those inspired words. My wish is that every citizen of this great country could listen to that message. Lynette and Landon and Lacey, thank you for this opportunity to pay tribute to a hero, to one of the greatest men in our state. My regrets, and I have a few, are that I didn't get a chance to know Lee or Eric before they were taken from us. But in the days that have followed, I've gotten an opportunity to know both of them very well, through their families, their loved ones, through the stories that have been told and shared, many of which you've heard today. On that fateful Sunday evening of August 17th, when those messages came in, I just kept thinking, this can't happen. This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen here. And truly, it rarely happens. As we looked back, the last time we lost 2 officers from a municipality or the state in one fateful shooting like that night was 1914. So more than 100 years, 1924, 101 years since anything like this had happened in our state. And so, as I mentioned yesterday, less than 24 hours later, I found myself in the medical examiner's office. And as I walked in, something was different. See, I'd been to the medical examiner's office before. It's a tough place with very strong people. People who see the worst tragedies every single day. This is their job. This is what they do. And this day, they weren't the stoic people I knew. The tears were flowing, and I couldn't understand why, what was different. This wasn't, sadly, the first time they'd had to deal with tragedy like this. And that's when I learned that Lee was one of them, that he was an investigator for Box Elder County, that these were his colleagues called upon to do the worst possible thing. And then they started telling me stories about Lee and Lynette, both of whom they had worked with, and how much they loved and adored these 2 human beings. And then the family came in, and I got a chance to meet them. And sadly, in my job, I get to be with people on a lot of their worst days. But I had never seen what I saw that day. I found out it was their 31st wedding anniversary. And somehow, through the darkness and the tears, Lynette was comforting everyone else. And I learned a lot about them that day and the couple that they are. You've heard a lot about Lee's career, but nobody's talked about the first part of that career because it was very short. And I'm going to talk about it because when I asked her to tell me about Lee, this is when I knew Lee was my kind of people. Lee actually started with the Highway Patrol, and his first assignment was in Salt Lake City. And it didn't take very long for Lee to say, "Can I get transferred to Box Elder County?" And they said, "Well, we don't really work like that." He said, "Okay." And the next thing everyone knew, he was working in Box Elder County. That's when I knew everything I needed to know about Lee. He needed to be back in Garland, back in Tremonton, back with his people. Now, we talk a lot about serving others. If you listened and paid attention to the list of service that Lee and Lynette give to the people in their county, yes, law enforcement is at the center of that, but there is so much more. Whether it's 4-H, Special Olympics, EMS trainings, their lives have been about service. There's something else unique that has happened in this tragedy, and it's the timing of this tragedy. It happened on Sunday night. That next week is the Box Elder County Fair. Now, for those of you who are not from Box Elder, you can't understand what this week means to the people who live there. Imagine if Christmas lasted 5 days. That's the county fair. Everyone lives for this time. It's a time of celebration, a time of joy, a time when the county comes together. It's like a giant family reunion that just keeps going on and on and on. Multiple nights of the rodeo, a horse parade before the rodeo that everyone comes out to see. The young people who have been growing their animals for the year come together to sell those animals, to raise money for school and other things. And everybody comes to buy those animals. There's nothing like it. Actually, there are some things like it in rural America. But it's really special. And I'm so grateful I've had a chance to be a part of it on a few occasions, including this year as I got to go to the rodeo. As I say that because that time of joy and celebration, that 5-day Christmas turned into something else. There was still some joy and some celebration. Community mourning. Mourning with those who mourn. The love and the tears and the hugs and the sadness. The riderless horses coming into that arena every night, representing those two brave men who gave their lives to serve their community. And then something magical. As all those kids came to sell their cows and their pigs, their sheep, 30 minutes before that, there was a little fundraiser to raise a little money to help these families. Pretty small communities. And the number just kept going up and up and up. Every one of those cows and pigs and sheep got sold that day, and those kids got their money for school. And somehow on top of that, almost $300,000 were raised by this community. And people wonder why. People wonder why Lee wanted to get back to Garland. That's the why. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that there is nothing in our country that is so broken right now that can't be fixed by Box Elder County. I was speaking with Mayor Holmgren, the mayor of Tremonton, and he reminded me that Jesus was referred to as the Good Shepherd. And I know a little bit about sheep herding. My uncle, my cousins raised sheep, and I used to spend my summers on the mountain herding sheep with my cousin. We were 15, and somehow they would leave the two of us alone for a week. No cell phones, herding over 1,000 sheep. And one day, just as his dad left, we were sitting there and getting ready to go out and check on the sheep, and his dad came screaming back down the road, and he said, "There's a bear in the sheep." And I grabbed the 30-06 and followed my uncle as we ran towards those sheep to protect them from that bear. It's as scared as I'd ever been. I thought, this is crazy. Why are we running towards this? Bear's much bigger than us. But we ran anyway because that's what you do. That's what you do. You protect the sheep. As Mayor Holmgren had me thinking about the Good Shepherd, I thought of Lee and Eric running towards that evil. And I thought of the Good Shepherd running to them. I know that they're okay. I know that Lee is doing great. But there's something else about shepherding. It's mostly boring. Sheep are pretty dumb. Sheep make a lot of mistakes. And, you know, I had a friend tell me once that he would take a bullet for me. And I said, I'd take a bullet for you too. And that's stuff we say. And then I became governor, and I realized that literally I have people who wear the badge whose job it is to protect me and my family, to take a bullet for us. And then I realized that that's not just something the governor gets. That's something that every person in Utah gets. I'm in a room full of people who put a badge on every day, a badge that says, I will take a bullet for you. My friends, my family, complete strangers, people I've never met, people who probably don't deserve it. And you represent the very best of us. But there is something more than that. You see, I will hopefully never be in a situation like that. Most of us never will. And that's the magic of. I pray every night that none of you who put on those uniforms will ever have to go through what happened in this terrible place at this terrible time. And I hope our hearts remember that there are other people impacted as well. Deputy Allred and his canine Azula. Sergeant Brager, who was the arresting officer on scene. Everybody in this police department who's been so impacted. There are many, many victims here. Let's not forget them. But more importantly than all of that is this. To take a bullet for all of us. Lee was willing to wear out his life in service to all of us. And that's the boring part of shepherding. It's giving back every single day. It's showing up. It's treating others with goodness and kindness and respect. It's helping with the Special Olympics and 4-H. It's volunteering in your local congregation. It's making sure your neighbor is okay. It's not caring whether they're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. It's that they're a human being. That's what Lee and Lynette have taught me. And so we have this arena filled with people to pay tribute to a hero who died protecting us. But I like to think that if this funeral had happened 40 years from now, when Lee was in his 90s, that it would have looked a lot like this. Because he had given his life in service every single day to making us all better people. Now, I don't know what it's like in heaven, but I know that we've needed some rain. And I know that somebody who got a degree in agriculture knew that we'd been praying for rain for a long time. And I don't know if those are tears that were falling from heaven this week, or if Lee went into his boss up there and made it clear that we needed some help down here. But I'm grateful that Lee is watching over all of us, and especially his family. May God bless us as we keep his memory alive. Thank you.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we are thankful for thy plan of happiness. We are thankful for thy Son in that plan. We are thankful for our brother Lee, and the kind person that he has been in life. We wish that thou would bless us all, that we'll be able to follow the plan in this life so we can return and live with Thee. We wish that Thou would bless us all, that we'll be forgiving to those in our families, in our communities, and those that we come in contact with, to be able to receive the happiness and the joy that can come from following the plan. We wish that Thou would bless us, that we'll be able to know where heaven meets the earth, and we will strive to be there, to commune with Thy Son, and be able to receive the strength we need to in life to endure those challenges in which we have. We pray that we will be able to know what to pray for in the weeks and months to come, that as we pray to know what Thou would have us feel and have us say, that we will feel Thy Spirit and be able to be comforted to do those things. We say this humbly in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Would the audience please rise? Uniformed personnel, please don your covers. Officers, attention. Present arms.
Pipes and drums. Scotland the brave, rowan tree, for force. By the right. 1, 2.
Order, arms.
If you are just joining us, we have been in coverage of the Sergeant Lee Sorensen funeral services here on the Utah State campus in Logan. A beautiful reminder of those who protect and service every day. And I can't help but think, leaving after today and also what we heard yesterday, that we're all inspired to be a little bit better in the nature of being a human.
Yeah, no question about it. I was story after story of selfless service. And Sergeant Sorenson has done in his life, from what we've heard, is directed toward others. We heard from a few officers there who spoke, who had nothing but the best memories and the lessons that they've learned. And of course the governor, another powerful speak, I thought, very emotional today.
Well, a couple bad memories. One of the officers said the couple first days they had together was rough, but somehow he was the kind of person that would learn and adapt his style of teaching and learning to whoever he was with. And after that, they were best friends forever. And I think that's what we're hearing, is that he knew how to talk to people, he knew how to protect, and he knew how to inspire others to do the same. And even his brother today talking about how he was the family peacemaker. It sounded like there was about 8 siblings in this family. And I think if you come from a big family, you know, you love hard, you fight hard, but he was the one that would always bring them back together again when there was those eventual family squabbles that happened to all of us.
That's right. You learn a lot of lessons if you have a big family and learning to fight, but then you can turn that all around, and it certainly pays off later in life. One of the officers, Officer Jackson, he was talking about how he was having a rough day once, and all of a sudden his Sergeant Sorenson found him just in his truck, and he pulled up and told him, go home. You know, he didn't know anything about it. He just had that innate ability to know that one of his officers wasn't maybe feeling well or not having a good day. He looked out for him.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. He said, go home and hug your wife, see your baby. Another officer that had a baby born, I think, a month early. They said that the nurse came in and sounded slightly concerned that there was an officer waiting for him and wanted to see him. They were probably thinking, okay, what have you done?
That was.
Yeah, he was just there to make sure that everything was okay. It really sounds like in every facet of his life that he was there trying to lift people up and trying to make their life a little bit easier, a little bit happier. It sounded like he had a box in the back of his car, so one of his officers needed something. He was like the Target or Walmart, and he had everything in there and was ready to make sure they had whatever they needed to be successful. And not only teaching, but it sounds like he was always learning along the way as well.
I guess we're looking now. We have people coming out. We actually see some coming our direction right now following the service. I'm sure that everyone's coming out of here uplifted and just realizing the good that just one person in this world can do.
That's right. We heard the governor talk just a few minutes ago saying how badly the state of Utah needed some rain, and that maybe their ag major, who just graduated here from Utah State University as an Aggie, sent some tears from heaven for us today. Luckily, another beautiful sunny day as his family will be departing.
Storm.
Yeah, a whole lot of rain, especially up here in northern Utah. Beautiful day, though, as people will be leaving for that procession that'll be leaving back to Garland, where he was born, raised, met his wife in high school, his high school sweetheart. They were married for 31 years. We heard also that the governor, the day that he met his wife Lynette, was on their anniversary.
That was on the anniversary
at the medical examiner's office of all places, which we also know that he'd recently in the last couple of years started serving at, and I think that that has to be one of the most, if not the most difficult jobs in the business of policing, where you have to be there not only on the worst day, but taking that sacred duty as he did and caring for people's loved ones after their deaths and making sure that they got the services and the rights they needed.
He did his best to follow up and help them heal, and he definitely wanted to let them know of the dignity and respect that their loved one deserved.
What we kept hearing over and over again, with that ability to be the peacemaker, hearing from other officers, even his chief, saying that he could de-escalate any situation. And I think part of the heartbreak of that is that he didn't have a chance to de-escalate this last situation. He was not given that chance. But it seemed to me from everything we've heard that that was one of his great talents and gifts and abilities, that he could talk to people no matter where they were on their worst day and try to make it better and turn it around.
Yeah, Chief Cordova called him the cornerstone of their police department, and he was a teacher who wisdom as a result of the lessons that he taught.
That's right. Jim Spiewak is also here today, watching as people are leaving the services, people are getting ready for that procession. What are you seeing and hearing where you're at, Jim?
So Heidi and Ron, we're over on the west side of the Spectrum Stadium where the hearse is out by the road where the body will be placed into in just a few minutes. And then, as you mentioned, it will head off to the cemetery. What we're seeing now is a line of people on both sides of the hearse from the street going all the way back to the Spectrum Stadium. It's got to be close to 100 yards, maybe even a little bit longer. It does appear that family members are right next to the hearse, along with some of the speakers that we heard from during the funeral. I did see the police chief near the front of the procession line right here as well. And then just men and women in blue, other family members, other friends lining both sides of the hearse going all the way back to the stadium where the hearse is pretty much right below this American flag that has been suspended here for the last 2 days by these two fire trucks. Now, Mike, if we can pan just a little bit to the right here, I want to show you all of the motorcycles that will be part of this procession. It goes as far as we can see beyond this hill just over here above us, but they have been lining up here for about the last 10 or 15 minutes or so waiting for this procession to begin. Hundreds, there has to be hundreds and hundreds of troopers, officers from other law enforcement agencies all over the state getting ready to pay their respects as part of this procession as Sergeant Sorensen's body prepares to leave the funeral services here on its way to his final resting place at the cemetery in Garland. And what else can be said beyond what we heard over the last 90 minutes or so at this funeral? And Ron and Heidi, you have been reiterating the fact of Sergeant Sorensen lived a life of service dedicated to his family, first and foremost, and then not far behind that, his community. And we heard it from his brother, Will, who was honored to speak, was getting choked up multiple times, trying to interject a little bit of humor into the speech in an impossible speech, what had to have been an impossible speech, but it spoke to the fact of who Sergeant Sorensen was. He was a man who liked to try to always interject a little bit of humor into a tough situation to try to lighten the mood a little bit. Again, giving his life on the line, his brother said that he stood for what all of the men and women in blue stand for, even on that tragic day back on August 17th. So while we wait out here on the west side of the property for the body to come out, we don't see it coming out just yet. We do expect it to happen here any moment. We will stay over here and we will let you know exactly when that happens, but it does appear that it's going to be here shortly because there are people lining the entire both sides of the hearse going all the way back to the stadium. Ron and Heidi.
Jim, thank you very much for that. Heidi and I are right here on the sidewalk, and we've just had a tight flow of law enforcement officers walking by. Maybe we can swing the camera back over this way.
Yeah, we've got a sea of officers as they're leaving now and making their way to part of that procession as well. As people are leaving, I think that we've talked a lot about how he was able to lift others up and meet them where they were. But I love hearing from absolutely everyone that he had a great sense of humor. He knew when to use it and could turn your darkest day into one where you could smile. One of my favorite quotes is, laughter through tears is my favorite emotion. And I think there was a little bit of that today. A little brightening from heaven and that humor that he was known for and helping to lift others up on their darkest days.
Go ahead. We have people. Bring the camera back over this way. As we look across the street, we see more officers and just people who were here at the funeral. And you can tell that there was just a big show of support over the last almost 2 weeks now. And I think the theme should be, and I'm going to coin this phrase again, I have it written down here as a matter of fact, be like Lee. I love that. Be like Lee. Just remember the type of person that he was.
And I think we heard that from all of the officers he worked with and the governor today, that none of us want to be going through what the state's been going through for the last almost 2 weeks now. But if we could just bottle up the feeling and the emotions and embody what these officers did in their communities every day, we'd be in a good place. I think we live in a divisive world sometimes with social media where we say things we wouldn't otherwise say out loud to people and maybe don't treat them with the kindness and respect they need. But after listening today, I think that we've seen a lot of unity, communities lifting each other up, friends and families here. We know the Box Elder District is out today. They were also out yesterday. You've seen families here.
Yeah, the
school
football
groups.
game.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've
Last
seen
night.
a lot of community involvement and a lot of talk about how important that county fair was to Sergeant Sorenson and the entire community. And while it was a time for people to get together and share a little bit of joy, it was also a way to lift each other up, have that sense of community, and mourn with those who mourn. We've seen a lot of that.
Yeah, and maybe turn the camera this way. We have a sea of blue headed our direction. Very impressive. And during the funeral, I was listening to it in my earpiece, and I just went for a walk around the building here, and I couldn't believe the number of cycles parked all around the perimeter of the building. Of course, all of those motorcyclists are going to be heading to Garland right now to escort Sergeant Sorenson. But it was also impressive. I even walked into the cemetery for a little while and kind of reflected as the funeral was going on. And I think that's something we can all do today and maybe for a week or so. Just reflect a little bit. I think it helps put life in perspective.
Yeah, a lot of perspective gained even just watching people as they are leaving these ceremonies today. We have seen officers holding their brand new babies in arms, holding their husband or wife's hands as they leave. They're all officers that leave home every day, knowing they're out there to serve and protect our communities, and there is a chance that they don't come home safely.
An example right here, a family walking by.
Yeah, beautiful to see the community outreach and all of the families and the officers here with their kids today. Honoring a hero today, another hero yesterday. I'm sure an emotional day for both of these families, supporting each other on what has been a very long week and a half for them since that fateful Sunday night.
And we would like to try to talk to a few people. Excuse me, could we talk to you for a second? Could we talk to you for a few seconds? You're from Santaquin, that's right. If you don't mind, we'd just like to ask you a couple of questions.
Come on over this way. Sorry, we're talking to people as they come out.
Okay, and you're with the Santaquin Police Department, Sergeant. And what's your name?
Sergeant Lurwell.
And you've been through this not even 2 years ago.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Sitting through this funeral service today, what was going through your mind and through your heart?
Resurfaced a lot of emotion, obviously, from our department just last year. And so brought a lot of emotion back, but it's good to see everyone supporting each other just as our support for us. We're doing the same thing for them. We're returning the favor, and we're all here. We're all part of the same team.
What would you want members of the community to know? Oftentimes you look at police officers, you forget they have families at home, they have lives of their own. What would you want people to know?
I think the biggest thing is to know that we're here to protect them, and we will literally give our lives for that purpose if that's what needs to happen.
What made the decision for you to join and be a police officer? It's not an easy decision.
Something I've always wanted to do. I grew up with a lot of people I looked up to as police officers, and so it was something at a young age I knew I wanted to do. So as soon as I got the opportunity, I jumped on it.
Every once in a while we hear about disdain for police officers, and in the funeral that was brought up on how Sergeant Sorenson handled that. He just went and talked to the people. Maybe they had a better understanding of who he was and who police are. So what did you think of that?
Absolutely. And I think that's a trait that all of us strive to have, to be able to talk to people and to gain that community trust. That's what we're after.
Any lessons you learned from him today?
Oh man, I wish I could have met him. Yeah.
And you know what? That's exactly what I was thinking. Both officers that we learned so much about today, I wish I could have met them, knowing them.
Absolutely, me too.
Sergeant, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Will do. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, Santaquin lost Sergeant Hoosier in May, not even a year and a half ago, just their first anniversary this last year. His widow, Kinda Hoosier, was here today at the services, was here yesterday as well. She told me this morning that she had met with both of these wives and was there with other wives across the state of Utah that have lost their loved ones in the line of duty. They're part of that thin blue line family that's there to support each other as they go through these next difficult weeks and years to come. She said that The first year they keep them pretty busy, but after that, that's when the quiet comes, and it sounds like these police families are ready and willing to support each other through those times.
Yeah, it'll be a few more minutes here before that procession takes off. It takes a few minutes to get everything lined up and ready to go. And again, they're headed to Garland, and it's probably going to actually with all of the motorcycles that I saw parked around the Spectrum.
Jim Spiewak has a little bit better vantage point than we do. We're going to go to him right now and tell us what you're seeing right now as they're getting ready for this somber procession.
Yeah, so it's still the same as it was just a few minutes ago. People are still lining both sides of the hearse, again, out here at the street, going all the way back to the Spectrum Stadium, which I'm guessing is about 100 yards or so. So there are several hundred people lining both sides of the hearse right there alone. Then we've got all of the troopers and officers and police officers from all over the state that are out here on the street, which has now been closed off, for the beginning of the procession when it starts. There's going to be what I would assume would be hundreds of motorcyclists, troopers, officers following the hearse on the way to the cemetery in Garland. Also, we have noticed over just the last few minutes, there have been a bunch of people, again, we're on a college campus here. There's been a bunch of students that have stopped by as they watch, pay their respects, and they're waiting to see the procession begin. So there's been a little bit of a group that has gathered here in terms of students. Looks like maybe there's even some faculty and staff that have stopped by to wait to see the body of Sergeant Sorensen be brought out of the stadium where the funeral was held, be placed into the hearse, and for this procession to begin. As we've been mentioning all day long, really for the last 2 days, this procession is going to begin underneath this American flag that has been suspended for the last 2 days now by 2 fire trucks, one from the Logan Fire and Rescue, one from the Smithfield Fire Department. This is a similar situation of what we saw yesterday. The procession is going to be different since Sergeant Sorensen's body is going to be laid to rest at its final resting place in a different cemetery than Officer Eric Estrada. But we're sort of reliving this moment again of watching one of these fallen officers be escorted out of the stadium into this hearse for yet another procession. Now, I am seeing the hands go up for a salute. I am beginning to hear the bagpipes play, so it appears as if Sergeant Sorensen's body may be making its way out of the Spectrum and on its way down this procession line that has formed on both sides of the hearse. It looks like it is happening now. I cannot see the casket just yet, but again, we're standing at least 100 yards away. We do have a pretty good vantage point, but we'll keep a close eye on when we can see the casket. Again, we are hearing the bagpipes beginning to play. Everyone that is lining up both sides of the hearse is in full salute. And once again, out here on the street, as far as we can see, there are troopers, officers, I would imagine from most, if not all, law enforcement agencies across the state that will participate in this procession here on the campus to the cemetery in Garland. And now we are beginning, possibly out-of-state officers as well. Okay, so we can now see the casket being brought out. I will go ahead and just stop speaking now as you listen into the bagpipes as the casket is brought out.
I would like to talk, but those of you I'll talk about.
So the salute has now been drawn down as Sergeant Sorenson's body has been placed into the hearse. I can see family. I can see his brother Will standing right there. I can see other family members as they helped place Sergeant Sorenson's body and the casket inside of the hearse. And again, there's quite a few people that have stopped, that were walking along the sidewalk to also pay their respects, as the line of mostly blue walks away from the hearse. The procession will begin here shortly. Again, the road that we're on just to the west of the property has been closed off, as there are hundreds of officers, troopers, not only from the state of Utah, but outside of the state of Utah, that will be part of this procession, which will start underneath this American flag that has been suspended here outside of the Spectrum for the last 2 days. First for the funeral of Officer Eric Estrada, and today for the funeral of Sergeant Lee Sorensen. I see family members and loved ones holding each other, hugging each other as they're walking away from the hearse, probably making their way to their vehicles so that they can be part of the procession as well, as Sergeant Sorensen's body will begin to make its way over to his final resting place here in just a matter of minutes. I don't hear the motorcycles that have started up yet. Would assume that would be a sign that the procession would begin shortly thereafter. So I imagine right now the family, the friends, those that are invited, because it is by invite only to go back to the cemetery for the burial, all of those folks now are making their way back to their vehicles and will take part of this escort of this procession over to the cemetery. And Ron and Mary, as I toss it back to you, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we heard over and over and over again, not only today, but since we learned shortly after this tragic incident on August 17th that Sergeant Sorensen was one of the officers killed, how much of a steward of the community he was. Family, and then community, and life of service. We have been talking about it over and over and over again, how he wasn't just an officer, he wasn't just a sergeant, he was part of the medical examiner's office, he was an EMT, he was an instructor in many other regards for specialized training. One of the things that he was so excited about being promoted to sergeant was the fact that he was going to be able to help other officers. And from those that we heard from today that spoke at the funeral, they said exactly that. He helped me through the good times and the tough times. We all go through tough times. And the common denominator is that Sergeant Sorensen was always there. If not the first one there after a baby was born, one of the first ones, wanted to be there and wanted to continue that life of service as a sergeant. And that is the type of man that he was. That was the type of life that he lived. And it's a great example for all of us to try to live up to that same example. So the hearse now is backing up for a little bit. It looks like the driver is going to be getting back out. Again, I think that they're just working through some of the logistics now as they get ready for this procession. This procession is logistically going to be a bit of an operation, so they're working through some of those final details right now. But yeah, they down to our left, they have for quite a while, at least a quarter mile, flashing lights. Looks like all those officers are getting ready to be part of the procession as well. So Ron and Heidi, we will toss things back to you, and we will stay out here for when this procession begins.
All right, Jim, thank you very much for that. We'll certainly keep an eye on it. We have a bit of a vantage point from where we are when that procession begins. And we have someone we'd love to talk to right here. This is Captain Christian Newland. He's over Peace Officer Standards and Training. They're the ones who train officers and certify them. And so after what we witnessed this week and the funeral, what would you say to new police officers?
It's hard because we need them to do the job. We need them to be safe. We need to train them how to do the job safely. But at the same time, this is an eventuality that every officer may have to face. And so helping them understand the magnitude of it, but also helping them understand that when this happens, it was said by some of the speakers today, nothing brings the community together, nothing shows the support and the brotherhood like a tragedy like this. So there really is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think for any new recruits or anyone looking to join the profession, I think that would be my advice, is that it's a terrible, terrible tragedy, but at the same time, look at how it brings people together as well.
And we just saw a group that just left that was standing behind us. Young recruits look like they're fresh out of high school and college. I'm starting to feel old because they look so young. But they're here, they're watching, they're supporting, and they're learning that as they go. What would you want people at home to know and take away from this as they watch these services today and also yesterday?
Again, anyone watching that hasn't worn the badge, that hasn't served in law enforcement, notice that brotherhood. Notice how closely we all come together and how deeply it impacts us. But again, also notice that we're going back to the job. The next day, we're right back on the street. We're right back doing what we love and doing what we need to do.
And we've seen so many, heard so many stories about Sergeant Sorenson today, being a leader, a sergeant, and how he took care of those under him, training as well as being a counselor, an example. What about those lessons and teaching them to new officers?
I commiserate with Sergeant Sorenson, and I have a lot of sympathy for that, because as you move up the ranks, and I'm sure Sergeant Sorenson felt the same, the level of responsibility you feel as a supervisor, sending your officers into situations like that, into situations where they may get hurt and something worse may happen to them, it's a lot to shoulder for any supervisor. And so hearing that Sergeant Sorenson did it right, that he was willing to lead from the front, was amazing. It was great to hear.
Moments ago, you were taking pictures with some of the officers that have come out of state. That's been part of your job that you do. Before we let you go, because we know you need to join the procession, why is it so important that you have that brotherhood and support that comes from across the country?
So this is actually a nonprofit group called Brotherhood for the Fallen, and they come from all over the country. They send representatives to every line of duty death. They've got members right now in Maui and in other places where officers have recently fallen in the line of duty. It's critical that these officers, it is not a Utah thing, it is not a Box Elder thing, this is a worldwide brotherhood, certainly national. And to have these guys come from all over the country, it really shows the support and shows that no matter where you are as an officer, no matter how dark it gets, you're never alone.
Okay, Captain Christian Newland, Utah Highway Patrol, thank you very much, and stay safe. Yeah, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. He is going to be joining the procession now, which we understand is leaving right now. Let's go to Jim Spiewak.
Heidi and Ron, motorcycles have fired up. The driver of the hearse is now in, and the lights are on and flashing, and it appears as if this procession will begin here momentarily. It looks like we are underway. And just to give you some sense, this is probably going to take a while because, Mike, I don't know if you want to pan a little bit to the right, just to give viewers a sense of we're right in the middle of a hill, but so we can only see so far. But there are just motorcycles for as far as we can see. We don't know exactly how far that procession line goes back, but I would imagine it goes back for quite a ways. Just based on the number of motorcycles we saw circling here about a half hour ago while they were getting into position. So the procession is now beginning. Sergeant Sorenson's body is inside the hearse. Heidi and Ron, back to you.
Yeah, Jim, thank you very much. And 2 News at noon starts right now with our continuing coverage of the funeral. And as you can see in the background here, the procession well underway as Jim Spiewak has told us. And also the fire departments from Brigham City, Garland, Tremonton are joining that procession as well.
And we also have learned today that his wife, Lynette, Sergeant Sorenson's wife, working with the fire department as well. So this is a family of service. Also joining us at this noon hour is Congressman Blake Moore, who serves the Northern Utah area in Congressional District 1, attending the services
Okay, hearse
today.
is leaving.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for helping cover it.
Okay, we understand that the hearse is leaving right now, so we'll cut away to that. So we'll see that part of the procession. Jim, are you nearby? Can you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, so the hearse just left at the back of the procession line. I would have to imagine that procession line is going to be at least a quarter of a mile long. And Sergeant Sorenson's body is now leaving the Spectrum parking lot on his way to his final resting place, making his way down the hill. And the procession line is now turning west off of the property of the Spectrum Stadium. And there is just lights as far as we can see. And as we take a look, while we have a vantage point for just a couple more seconds before the hearse makes that left-hand turn to start heading toward the west, towards the Garland Cemetery, the funeral services have now officially concluded and the procession has begun. And Sergeant Sorenson's casket, body, and hearse is now out of our view on his way to the cemetery. So this part of the campus is now starting to clear out a little bit as the rest of those that are going to be following in the procession will follow behind. It appears now as if all of the other invitees to the cemetery, I would imagine other officers, family, friends, since it is by invite only, they are now leaving the parking lot and will be part of this procession line as well, which will make it even longer. As we have previously reported, it's maybe a 35 minute drive, but with this procession, I would have to imagine this procession line, as long as it is, I would imagine that's going to take a considerable more amount of time than that. And it just really speaks to how many people have come out to pay their respects for this fallen officer that gave his life back on August 17th while responding to a domestic violence call. Heidi, Ron.
All right, Jim, thank you very much for that. And Congressman Moore, we appreciate you standing by here to talk to us, and your district deeply impacted by what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And a community that you wouldn't hear of something like this happen much. And as the governor said, and to lose 2 officers in one incident, it hasn't happened in 100 years. And for it to happen in Box Elder is it's been a tough couple of weeks. I'll reiterate his experience. Being able to be up to the rodeo and the fair, which was just immediately after this tragedy, was the part of this whole experience that is like the beacon of hope and the happy part of it. When you see the community, when you see them come together, it's I don't know, sorry. It's just a different experience, and it's what makes it important to cover this and to show. I hope every Utahn watches the governor's speech for what he just gave, and from Eric Estrada from the funeral yesterday. They're important because they help us recognize the importance of law enforcement in our everyday, day-to-day interactions, and you have to take that, all the sadness and all the pain and what the family's going through is unimaginable, but just being able to experience seeing all those officers saluting as it ended, it's just really good to be able to remember that for what our community needs to see from an event like this. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I think we've all been very emotional the last couple of days. I'm sure it's easy to get busy in Washington and work on the legislation, work on the bills and the laws that we all deal with back at home. But the important work is done when you're back at home and you're in your district, you're meeting with people and understanding communities. What will you take away from the last 2 days of services and listening to both of these officers and how they lived and conducted their lives?
I literally had that thought as we were ending the service today, or even during part of it. It's like, there's so much noise. There's so much noise in our political world, our day-to-days, and it's just the stuff at the core of it. That stuff really doesn't matter. You gotta grind through it whatever you need to. But I'll clearly take away just seeing a community come together, seeing them, rally around this, like I said, unspeakable tragedy. And this is the governor said something. He said all the problems in our country could be solved by a place like Box Elder County. It was a neat sentiment.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we've all seen that in the last 12 days as they've risen up to support each other, to love each other. And we even heard that Sergeant Sorenson loved a good laugh even on serious days, and we got a little bit of that, and hopefully we can take some of that joy away from this. Have you been able to meet with any of their families during this time, or tell me a little bit about what
So
you've been able to do?
I've just been able to interact with like the city and county officials. That stuff hopefully will be able to come later. Their family has, I'm not as close to it as what you would look to the Box Elder County commissioners.
Yeah.
Or the mayors from Tremonton and Garland, and the chiefs of police and everything. And those are the people that have been just like buoying them up. And we hope, for some proclamations and things that we can do on our end. Also don't want to, involve ourselves in these intimate moments. But as a community, what I tried to express in a newsletter recently was, you may not actually get to know the families of Estrada and Sorensen, but you do know a police officer in your own neighborhood. I'm a Little League coach with my son, and one of the guys on our Little League team, he's a police officer. He works for the Highway Patrol. He's the defensive coordinator. I'm the offensive coordinator. It's not really a title. It's 12-year-old football.
Your dad.
It's not officially. We're just like dads, like volunteering, but we like to give ourselves elevated titles.
Sure.
That was the moment I had when I found out. I went directly to him at that practice that night and was like, I'm so grateful for what you do in our service, in our community. You don't get told enough. So, if you're not, you may not know this, but anybody in Washington County or Utah County or Wasatch County, your own police officers, and this could be an opportunity to go and try to do something, support them. So
yeah, I love that. One final question: what would be your message to the state that you represent?
Yeah, it would exactly be that. Just interact with your law enforcement in a positive way, and find a way to support them, because as was mentioned today, there's a lot of boring parts and there's a lot of mundane that goes on, but they're constantly there for us, and they're there for us on the days you don't even need them. So,
an important reminder.
Yeah.
Congressman Blakemore, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here.
Absolutely.
And with the community up here in northern Utah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much.
Standing by right now is Brian Malahy. He has another vantage point as we continue on with this procession that is now heading to Garland. Brian?
It was a simple funeral today. I was struck by the simplicity. Representative Tiara Auxier from Morgan County is with us, and you were listening to the whole thing. You were the only person who had a takeaway that I had not heard from anybody else today. What was most striking for you at this funeral?
Something that I thought was really interesting was, as we were hearing about this life of service, one thing that kept coming up over and over is the multiple jobs that Officer Sorensen had, and that he had to be able to be a medical examiner, or he had his work at the police department, and he was doing other things as well. And I sat there and wondered, why is it that our officers have to take these other jobs to supplement their income? There's a special kind of person who's willing to put their lives on the line and do this kind of work, and it made me wonder if they're being funded enough.
And it's one thing to say, we support our law enforcement officers, we honor their service and their sacrifice. But if you're not paying them enough, do those words somehow ring less full, maybe even hollow? unless you're giving them what they need to support their families.
It's true. It's something I'd like to look into more. In my district, it's been something that I've heard about quite often, and I know a lot of this is a local issue and it has to do with taxes, but I do wonder, this is, I was talking to someone and talking about the funeral and being like, I think it's so important for us as legislators and state officials to be there and support them, but how would the family feel that we're here? And someone was like, you know what, they don't just belong to their families, they belong to all of us. And as I was thinking about that, if they belong to us, are we taking care of them the way that they should?
So what can be done about it, do you think?
I would love to look into it. I'd love to see the funding. I'm not super aware in this field exactly how it's all being funded, but I think it's something we need to look at. Every session, we bring in the families of the fallen officers and firefighters, and I sit there and I look at them and I imagine service to us, and I wonder, is there more that we can do?
And you're on the front row at the legislature.
I am. So I see all the wives and the kids, and it's very, very touching.
It's emotional, brings tears to your eyes.
It is.
Sometimes.
My seatmates just know to hand me the Kleenexes.
It's an issue that is perennial. I mean, this is something that is not new. Police officers, in many cases, not making enough. Some departments perhaps paying pretty well. But when you get out into rural Utah, it seems it may be a very different story.
That's true.
Yeah. He also had a farm, from what I understand, or his family was steeped in farming in this community, too.
So
in addition to all the other
That's a lot of more work without very much pay.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to look into it.
I am, yeah.
Representative Tiara Auxier, with which I think is a really poignant, salient takeaway from this today. We say over and over again, and it's important, and it's heartfelt, and it is sincere, that law enforcement is so important. We appreciate the sacrifice. But when you don't pay them enough, how much do you appreciate them? That's the question. Live outside the Spectrum, Brian Malecki, KUTV.
Awesome. Oh, you look great. Thank you.
Brian, thank you. We are out here as it's getting a little bit quieter outside the Sorensen Center right now. If you were able to watch the services today or yesterday, you heard the beautiful rendition of the national anthem, and joining us is Cole Hartley, who performed that. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. So how did this all come about, you coming here from Nashville?
Yeah, so I actually I was out in Utah playing shows all the way through July and August, and was on my way back to Nashville last weekend and was playing a show in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I got off stage, got a phone call saying, hey, come back to Utah. You're requested to come perform at these funerals. And I don't really know how my name came up. I didn't know either officer or their families, and just kind of honored to be thought of and part of it.
Do you sing the national anthem on a normal basis, or is this
do.
something you had to practice? Because
Yeah,
it's not an easy.
You're right. No,
song to sing or
it's probably the
perform.
hardest song I sing, but I do sing it fairly often, from rodeos to sporting events and just kind of all over.
So what's your career looking like now? You just moved to Nashville not too long ago, so what are you aspiring for?
You know, whatever God has in store for me, whether that's being a songwriter or performing all over the country, I enjoy doing all of it, and so whatever He's got in store, I'm ready for.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, when you come to something like this, I don't know if you've done a funeral before, but this was a horrible tragedy, but yet a great way that the community has come together and offering support. Your feelings when you've been here kind of in the spotlight a little bit to make people feel better?
I think, for me, coming here and singing the national anthem in any regard for me is an honor, because for me, singing that song is more than just, showing people that I can sing. It's about paying tribute to fallen service members or fallen law enforcement or anyone who's fought for our freedoms and defended our rights. And so getting to perform today on a much larger scale to that extent was humbling, to say the least.
You were able to sit through these services and be a part of it, obviously something you weren't planning on like most others who were here. What did you take away from it?
One thing I took away is that there's no shortage of community here in Utah. I'm proud to be from Utah. I grew up in Alpine, Utah, went to school here at Utah State. And it's just the community that comes around, especially these rural counties, Cache, Box Elder County, you can't find it anywhere else. It's just, it's touching, it's heartwarming, it makes you feel like you're part of them, even if you're not. And it just feels like one big family.
And speaking of family, did you have an opportunity to talk with the family members both days?
Yeah, a couple of them. Not exclusively, but a couple of them came up to me afterwards as they were waiting to load their family member into the hearse. They came up and they were like, "Hey, thank you for your rendition." And I sat and chatted with them for a second. But
feels good to be a part of something like this to help lift the community?
Absolutely. Big honor, big responsibility. I feel humbled that I was selected to carry that torch.
Well, I'm sure the family and everyone else there at the services appreciated what you did. So thank you and best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Many people in the community helping out today. As I walked inside, there were many from the area, whether it was Cache County or Box Elder, that were here helping with the programs, helping to make sure everything was, trying to lift these families and make sure that everything goes off seamlessly so that they can be present in this day for their loved ones.
It obviously came together very nicely. Utah Highway Patrol actually coordinated all of the activities, everything concerning the procession, the services, and that was a big responsibility. And, you know, from our vantage point, it went flawlessly.
Yeah, and double the responsibility as we've been talking to them and working through this. They obviously work with the families of the fallen this time, working with two different families going through the most difficult time of their lives at the same time. And now they've all joined in that procession as they're headed to Garland. We'll be following them as that happens. Both of these families, the Estrada family and the Sorensen family, have asked that burial be something that's a private moment, so we will be there but at a distance, so they can have those final moments to say their goodbyes and have that moment as a family together. Yeah, and they deserve that time, that silent time where they can reflect and say a final goodbye. We have been keeping track of the procession, and from our vantage point, not exactly sure where it is at this point. It's like a 20-mile drive to Garland. Right now, we want to listen into some of the sound that you missed. If you've missed the funeral, we have a little bit of that for you to listen into. Let's listen right now.
Lee was more than just an officer in our department. He was a cornerstone.
Sorry,
He was the guy you went to for knowledge, if you needed a good laugh, or you wanted the honest to goodness truth. Because Lee never pulled punches. He'd tell you what he thought.
Lee worked hard his entire life. Lee had 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, all the time, always working.
Lee never liked to be called sir, boss, OIC, officer in charge, sarge, or any kind of title. If you tried, he would correct you and ask you that you just call him Lee.
Now, we talk a lot about serving others. If you listened and paid attention to the list of service that Lee and Lynette give to the people in their county, yes, law enforcement is at the center of that, but there is so much more.
All right, we invite you to, if you didn't get a chance to watch the funeral in its entirety, we'll have it for you on our KUTV YouTube page. There were some really powerful messages there, and something that we can all take away from the example that Sergeant Sorenson set for really all of us.
I think that's my big takeaway. The last couple of days, we hear how both of these men, Officer Estrada and Sergeant Sorenson, how they conducted their lives, whether they had the badge on or off, that they were always lifting others in their community.